me quickly welcome Kartika to this particular FDC. Kartika, thanks for taking the time, sparing an hour. It was lovely because when I wrote to her, she said, "Look, my Sundays are sacrosanct, so I don't do Sundays," which I really respect. So I'm glad you said that. I should bring that discipline into my own life. But if you can make time on a Saturday, we'll do this on Saturday. So we're
Thank
doing
you.
this on Saturday instead. So Kartika is a publisher at Westland Books. She spent over 25 years editing and publishing fiction, non-fiction, translations, poetry, and graphic novels. She began her career at Penguin Books India, after which she spent a decade as publisher and chief editor at HarperCollins India before moving to Westland. At Westland, she is responsible for setting up Context, an imprint that focuses on literature and politics. In 2022, she was shortlisted for the IPA Pre-Voltaire Prize by the International Publishers Association. But I don't know Kartika too well. We've spoken and met here and there a few times. But what I can tell everyone is that in the publishing community, she is one of the most universally liked and respected person. I've not met anybody who said anything. I'm not making this up, okay? And yet to meet anybody who's bitched about you. But everybody is like, Kartika, Kartika. That is the kind of response you get.
There are some quotes there about people who don't make enemies, being very boring, being very ineffectual. So I'm sure I've made my enemies. I hope I have.
So anyway, but this was the LinkedIn intro. But tell us a little bit more about yourself. Tell us about what you do besides publishing. What are the other things that you enjoy, or do you have a pet or something interesting?
What do I do? I'm actually the mother of two boys, so that's kept me pretty busy for the last
That's a
couple of
full-time job.
decades. But at this point, it's freedom because one is just finishing his master's, another's just entered, like he's at the end of his first year of law school. So suddenly, even my Sundays have become more mine. But
Right.
certainly, life is opening up again, and I'm beginning to do things like just hang out with friends, or just wake up in the morning and reach for a book to read because I don't have no drop-offs, no difficult things to do in the morning. But what does a publishing person do actually? It's a very difficult thing to find anything that one does that is not connected to publishing. It just sucks you up, this place. I mean, it's not just publishing. I imagine that's true for writers, for people who work with words generally. It feels like everything comes back to or begins with this passion. So there's a lot of things that go with it. Whether even if you're binge watching a Netflix show, you end up thinking about the books that have become shows. And surprisingly, I've realized that a lot of the shows that I've fallen into by accident almost or totally loved have got this credit saying based on this book. It's really interesting how much, without realizing it, how much of the ideas world either comes through books or from books. And it's a mystery why then people keep saying people aren't reading books anymore, because clearly they are. It's this myth that they're not. But
Well, yeah. I hope that's right. That's something I wonder about. And people are very cagey when I start talking about numbers. But in general, as an industry, are people reading more? Are they reading less? Or is it more or less flat? Or is the mix changing? What's happening?
I have a feeling that there are more young people being drawn to reading now in a more visible way. I don't think there was any other way it was. There were always readers among young people. But there's a little bit more thought going into why they are reading. Perhaps there's also all kinds of other things happening, like social media conversations, like virtual book clubs, like I'm sure for many parts of the world, Book Talk has done it. Amazon and Goodreads, though they cause a lot of problems as well, they still populate the book world in many interesting ways with conversations around books and so on. So
Right.
I don't think it's true that they're not reading or that the books numbers have gone down. There's a constant swing in what people are reading and what trends are persuading them to read. It's true that in India, for instance, that wave we saw of popular fiction selling very large numbers, that wave we had with Chetan and Amish and
Mhm.
that lot of commercial writers, we see that as having settled,
Mm.
not climbing anymore, not doing the loops that they did in the past.
Okay.
Mm, and nothing seems to have replaced those in quite the same way. What we have is the one-off bursts of books or writers coming in,
Mm.
but
Mm.
not like a genre that's settled in, like Amish did with mythological fiction.
Yeah.
Chetan did with that commercial novel of his, which was like, India, non-urban India facing as well. Uh,
Mm.
those highs seem to have calmed a little bit.
Okay.
Uh, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing,
Mm.
because even if there was a very high level of appreciation for a certain kind of writing at one time, it
Mm.
wasn't as though, like, so, okay, so what we might have said is that, okay, everyone's reading Amish and mythological fiction, so there's going to be a lot more mythological fiction. And it did happen,
Yeah.
and continues to be a popular genre, as it always has been in India. But it isn't as though someone else came along and sold lakhs of copies.
Right.
So clearly it was that one writer who managed to capture something very
Mm.
important for the reader.
Mm.
um, and yet when I see the number of book clubs that have started, when I
Yeah.
see courses and learning centers like yours,
Mm.
clearly there is a dedicated readership and a dedicated uh, band of people creating work for
Mm.
these groups to read and
Mm.
speak about. So
Mm.
I would think it's just a matter of change, what and how and why is changing. But
Right.
when we see the numbers, the strangely the initial numbers, the first print runs, etc., are still in a very bare 1,000, 2,000, 3,000.
Okay.
That is something that has not shifted for the last 20 years.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah.
So there's
And
many things happening, is what I mean. This and that.
so in this sort of like a change is the only constant. So in this shifting marketplace or morphing marketplace or reader space, how do you choose your next book? I mean, what does, because this is a group of wannabe writers who are you know here because they're thinking eventually I want to pitch my book to Kartika. So
Mm.
so
What do we publish? Yeah. Why do
what are
we
you
publish?
looking for, or what is it that gets you going first as a reader or as a person? Never mind
Right.
Western, but for you as a person, what gets you going? What gets you excited?
For me, it's very straightforward, actually. It's an interesting, I can't even say original anymore in this age of AI,
Mm.
but as close to original as possible. Uh, an idea, a premise that strikes you as something that has not been done many times before. I doubt you can come up with something that's never been done before. But certainly, even if it's a crime novel, but if it's a novel that's does or introduces a character or a situation that seems fresh and not done to death. Oh God, that was a bad one for crime fiction. But
Mm.
anyway, that's really interesting, right? And that's a first stop for any editor. I've not read this before. This sounds interesting and fresh. Um, but over and above everything else, it's the writing.
Mm.
If you find the prose to be interesting, fresh, doing something that's not been done in the same way before, it's a combination of those two things: the idea, the premise, the writing. Um, and then inevitably, it's the sale marketing angle to it, because in these times, it's become really imperative that the author steps in and does help with selling the book to readers.
Mm.
And I obviously don't mean selling, but I mean it's so much easier for the publisher to work with something, a profile, a presence on social media, a willingness to go out and meet people. Uh, it's just become very, very important to have that little addition to the mix. I think there are still writers who are very, very reclusive, who do not want to be seen. Anis Salim comes to mind, the
Mm.
novelist. And that's fine too. But then you build a story around the reclusivity if you're the marketing person. You cannot avoid the marketing story.
Mm.
So I think whether it's as a person or as a publisher, it would have to be a combination of these three things that eventually drives the decision to publish, along with that other factor, which is what is current, what is the trend, what is everyone looking for, what is the gap in the market. All those things as well come up. But really, if you present an editor with a brilliantly told narrative, with a fresh take on life or character or situation or genre, there's no way they're not going to read it. It's as simple as that.
So this leads me to a different question, which was actually much further down on our list, which was social media. So I'm a writer with zero social media, but I write a great book, and I'm another writer who's written an equally great book, but I have social media. Do you look at the social media profile of authors, or does that change by genre? I mean, how does it work?
But the answer to that is really not in the great book, as in the great book in what genre. Now, if you have given me a great book on health and nutrition, and you're like, oh, wow, this is a stunning take on how to lose weight in like 10 days. But if you don't have a social media profile, if nobody's heard about you in that space, if you're not someone who can talk up that thing, then it's really hard to market it, because there's so many social media influencers in that health and fitness space that consume people's attention, that you'll find the book is going to be very hard to sell.
Yeah.
But if you've written a great book that is like a great novel, a literary novel, honestly, it does not matter if you're a social media person, because the actual conversion of a presence on social media to sales of a book are not very much in a direct proportion. If it's any other category, but something that directly comes off their social media presence. If you are a CEO of a big company and you've written a novel, that's a story for the first week or the first month. But if the novel isn't great, if the word of mouth isn't great, it doesn't matter whether you're the CEO of the biggest company in the world, it's going to be much harder to sell that book. But yeah, so it depends on what kind of story it is and why that social media presence is so important. But yes, marketing colleagues inevitably always check them out on social media and say, well, okay, let's be prepared that this is going to be hard to sell. At least that much. At this point, we haven't reached a stage where we're saying no social media presence, sorry, no signature on contract. That hasn't happened yet.
Thank God for that.
Yes,
lots of people will give a sigh of relief. Right. So within Westland, you also have context, which is political, and ECA, which is Indian languages. So, like, how does it work? Like, for example, does each of these have a quota? Do you have an annual plan saying, okay, this is how many will go into this imprint? How does that tell us a little bit from the inside?
Yeah. So I'll tell you why we do imprints in the first place. It's got nothing to do with readers actually buying on the basis of which imprint it is. I don't think people even care which publisher it is, honestly. I mean, there's a lot of noise that brands will make, and every brand will try and position itself in such a way that you have the confidence to say, oh, it's got a penguin bird on it, it's got to be a good book. But I think we're all wiser than that, and we all read what we want to read, because every brand is pushing so many books and products down your throat. So you're not going to read for that reason. So I don't think the reader really goes for that. What it does when you have imprints is it helps crystallize and help plan in terms of the publishing and the marketing. We have a lot of imprints at Westland. We have Context. We have Ekada, which is the translations and languages imprint. This year, we launched something called QD. Literally last month, we had this event for it. It was great fun, which is Queer Directions. So we hope to publish a certain number of books every year that is dedicated to queer writing. Middle last year, we launched another one called If, with a novel by Gautam Bhatia. If is a speculative fiction imprint for Indian writers. Now, what happens is that there's a certain scatteredness about the way manuscripts come in, agents send in proposals, books get accepted. You can end up a year with many books in one category and none in another. I mean, or at least a few in another. But if you have an imprint that you're watchful of and careful of, And you have editors assigned to these imprints who are saying, this is my baby, I'm going to watch this one, make sure there's enough good books every year in this one. Then you help grow the publishing list in a certain structured way, with enough diversity, with enough really good books in each category, which means you're also reaching different sets of readers. So before If came along, there hasn't been a speculative fiction imprint in India. And when we published and started, and like then we did an open call for submissions, and we have an anthology going out now to, this is the first If anthology. We hope to do one every year where it's blind submissions. The editor is not, the editor as in Gautam Bhatia edited the first volume. He doesn't know who the writers are. We do not choose on the basis of who these people are. So the marketability is really not the question at all. What we're hoping is to discover new writing and new writers. So each of these things, these imprints are really meant to focus our mind and our energies. And we try and put a certain number of titles to them for each year, and have editors saying, okay, this is my attempt to get so many books out so in these formats. So Context, for instance, is fairly nonfiction heavy and political, and they often tend to do hardbacks at a slightly higher price. Your If or QD might end up being paperbacks at a more affordable price. So these divisions are all there for us to be able to do the thing better, and to drive some marketing that is more targeted to a specific readership that will then be easier to keep talking to. So if people know that If exists, any book that comes from If will go to that target audience in a slightly more organized fashion. And when they see that word If on the cover, then hopefully they know that this is a speculative fiction work, and they may be readers or they may not. It'll be an instant, quick choice of whether to read or not to read. So it's a planning thing, these imprints. In large publishing houses, which is, so if you look at Penguin Random House, I realized when you were introducing me that you said Penguin Books India, and I'm thinking I'm probably the only one in this room who remembers Penguin Books India in a very clear way, because now everyone's used to PRH, which is Penguin Random House. And Penguin Books, over years and years and years, have been acquiring imprints. I mean, Random House was a huge merger. But they had Putnam, they had all kinds of imprints. I mean, Michael Joseph, Allen, what's the first imprint they have? The one that started up the paperbacks. Okay, never mind. But there's so many little publishing houses that they just kept buying and buying and buying. And so they became the big publishing house. So what happens is that when you acquire that publishing house, you often end up saying, but they've got such a good list, which is why we acquired them. And they have an identity, which is why we acquired them. And the person who probably led it was an editor who was known or could network with agents and so on. So they're like, okay, let's leave that imprint there as an imprint within the publishing house. So you have these various imprints that have grown with time. And then once in a while, you'll find like this shake up where they say, okay, now we're going to throw this imprint out and that imprint out, and then we're going to readjust. And this one is going to look after these three, and that one's going to look after those three. So those changes keep happening. One of the ones that I'm really familiar with is HarperCollins, where HarperCollins acquired Fourth Estate, which was a really good literary independent publishing house led by Victoria Barnsley, who had founded it. Victoria Barnsley became the CEO of Harper UK, and Fourth Estate became an imprint at Harper. Something like 10 years ago, she left Harper. Fourth Estate continues to be an imprint. But in that time, some of the imprints that Fourth Estate had there was an imprint called Flamingo, which would have been very similar to Fourth Estate, which was already in Harper. They shut down Flamingo. So from the outside, actually, these imprints are not perhaps important. Some remain because they publish great books and readers remember them. But really, it's a publisher's kind of working mechanism more than anything else.
So, this is, firstly, thank you for that. That's very helpful because it really helps me wrap my head around. I have a book and it's Penguin Blue Salt, and I've never really asked myself, why is the blue salt there? But
because of Hussain Zaidi, I guess.
Because of Hussain Zaidi, he was involved in that. Yeah. Okay. So, Yeah, and mine was true crime, so it makes sense now to pull Hussein into that.
Yeah.
Um, Now, but as an outsider, we are not going to be knowing which imprint, which editor. So, do you think so? First question, actually, more fundamental. I'm an author. First time I've written a manuscript. Should I go to a literary agent or should I go directly to a publisher?
This depends on, again, on what you're looking for. Are you looking for, do you have a finished manuscript that you're happy with?
Finished. Assume.
If you've got it finished, then I would say it's very simple to approach publishers in India still.
Yeah.
We're not in a state like in the US or the UK. We're not in a state within that industry or the growth of the industry where editors don't have time to even look at unsolicited manuscripts, or there are no industry imperatives against it. So I often tell writers, why don't you do some research? Find out who are the publishing houses or editors that you would like to work with. This is not that difficult to do because you just have to make a few calls to people. You just have to go to a bookstore, browse acknowledgements pages of books that are on the shelves. If you've written a great novel, look at the other great Indian novels that you really like. Look at who's published them, look at the acknowledgements page to see who are the editors for these books, and say, hey, I think I want someone who's edited this to also look at my book. That's one very simple way to try and identify the people you want to work with.
Okay.
And then just write into them. I mean, blind is good. I don't think people don't read. They do. Editors will read. If you're looking to not have those conversations, if you're saying, look, it's just too much of a gray area. I just don't know who these people are. I don't really care who these people are or who publishes me. I want to keep writing. And I want someone who's got my back, who's going to do all of this for me, who's going to talk to the editors, who knows all the editors already because they're in the business of agenting. They know what is the best place for a book like mine and what is possible. There's also the other factor, which is that all of the publishers that you find in India are publishing certain kinds of books wherever your genre fits. They all have similar distribution capabilities. They have similar abilities when it comes to putting their books out. Amazon kind of leveled the field for most people for that as well. The difference for a lot of people is that they want a particular brand, right? I know people who've grown up with, say, Penguin or Pelican or Collins or Pan, for that matter. They've read Pan fiction when they were growing up, and they'd say, I want that brand on my book, at least my first book. So if you have very clear ideas like that, then you can either just go to that brand and say, will you publish me? Or you can be play a little bit safer and say, hey, to the agent, will you be able to take me to these 5 people that I think should publish my book? And if the agent says, yes, they can, then leave it to them. If the agent says, look, I don't think your book is right for this people and we need to look elsewhere, then again, you have to take a call. Like, okay, so are you going to trust the agent to tell you what to do, or do you want to take a chance yourself? I think the people who choose literary agents are the people who want to just focus on the writing and get on with it and just leave everything else to the agent, which is absolutely fine to do. Those who are really invested in the journey themselves, who want to be part of the process, who want to be part of the marketing, who want to be part of every bit of that journey, they often end up wanting to do the direct conversation. So really, it's about who you are that you decided, because I don't think from the publisher's point of view, I don't think there's a difference in the way editors will view or respond or read a manuscript. It's not as though if a particular agent sends it, it will be read quicker or with more attention, or the decision will change because it's XYZ agent.
So I know you don't have any enemies, but I'm going to ask you this question in any case. There are good agents and then there are bad agents. How do you know which ones to avoid, at least? Are there red flags?
One conversation, that's all you need. One conversation. Pick up the phone to this person, because they will take calls, I'm sure. If they don't take calls, if they don't have the time to speak to you, don't bother, because that's important. That's why you're going to them. You need their attention, you need that time. One conversation, the way they speak to you, the way they speak about books, the way I speak about writing, I don't think it'll take you more than 15, 20 minutes of that conversation to know who you don't want.
Let's say you call somebody, they're very nice, very sweet, and then they say, yeah, give me 20,000 bucks, I'll represent you.
No, do not give money to be represented. You will give the agent the book because the agent wants to make money off you. You cannot be paying agents for that. The agent will get, I don't know, depending on the agent, 10, 15, 20% of everything you earn, which is another reason which I think people should go to agents or not, depending on what they are. I know writers who say, why should I give 15, 20% of everything I earn to an agent when I can just reach the publisher directly and there's nothing stopping me from doing that. So it's also about what you want to be able to, a happy parting with.
Fair enough. Great. Thanks.